Hello friends. So today we will discuss an important topic for RBI Grade B, which is time value of money. This is a video lesson on time value of money. This is a very basic topic, and a good understanding on this topic is mandatory to understand the topics on bonds, derivatives, futures, because the numericals on various topics in finance would use the concept of time value of money. So let's start on this topic. So the points which we will discuss in this topic are simple interest, compound interest, future value of money, future value of annuities, and the present value of money. And before we start, let me tell you that there was a question, or rather a numerical, from time value of money which used the concept of simple interest and compound interest last year. It was a 1 mark question. Now, what is time value of money? By the name itself, you can gauge that when you borrow or invest money, there is a value of time that needs to be considered. Now, let's take an example. Suppose you have 2000. As you can see, what would be the value of rupees 2000 after 1 year? So this is basically what we want to find. Now there are various views on that. Some people would say that the value of 2000 after 1 year would remain 2000. Suppose you keep this note of 2000 in your almirah and you take it out after 1 year, the value would remain the same. But then also, in a way, the value would have decreased, because today in 2000 maybe you can buy, say, 100 breads, but down the line after 1 year, in the same rupees 2000, you might be able to buy, say, only 90 breads. So the value of 2000 might have decreased after 1 year. That is a concept of inflation. We will not go into detail for that. We will discuss the time value of money without taking inflation into account. But suppose you have put the money in the bank and the rate of interest in the bank is, say, 10%. Now what would be the value of money after 1 year? Now the value of money after 1 year, that is, if rupees 2000 input in a bank at a rate of 10% for 1 year, the value of money would be 2200. Now how do we calculate this? Well, this is very basic. Most of you would have already know how to calculate this, but still, in case somebody is very new to this concept, we will start from the basics. So the principal amount is the starting amount. Here the principal amount is 2000. That is the starting amount which you have put in the bank. Now the amount after 1 year would be the principal plus interest. Now interest would be calculated as 10% of 2000, since the rate of interest is 10%. Now the 10% of 2000 would be 200. So the amount after 1 year would be 2000, which was your initial amount, plus interest, that is 200, and it becomes total of 2200. And now how do we calculate after 2 years? In the previous example we calculated after 1 year, and now let's say how do we calculate after 2 years. So again, the principal, which is the starting amount, here would remain 2000. The amount after 2 years would be the principal and the interest for those 2 years. So the interest in the first year would be calculated as 10% of 2000, which is 200 again. The interest in the second year would be calculated as again 10% of 2000, which is 200 again. So the total amount after 2 years would be 2000, which is your initial principal, plus 200, which is your interest for the first year, plus 200, which is your interest for the second year. So the total amount becomes 2400. So the value after 2 years would be 2400. Now this is the concept of simple interest. Now what is simple interest is that the interest on the principal amount remains the same each year. So here each year we will calculate the interest as 10% of 2000, which would be 200. So in the first year and the second year, and if it would have gone to 3, 4 and 5 years, the interest for each year would have been 200. You will better understand the concept of simple interest when we compare it with the compound interest in our next slides. Now we discuss the concept of compound interest. Now we go with the same example. Suppose your initial principal is 2000 and the rate of interest is 10%. What would be the amount after 2 years, considering the interest is not simple interest but a compound interest? Well, first we understand the definition of compound interest. Compound interest means that interest earned in a particular period would become part of principal during the subsequent period, and the interest would be charged on the total amount. So basically what the definition says is, suppose you have an interest of 200 in the first year. So in the second year your principal would become 2000 plus 200, that is 2200, and the interest in second year would be 10% of 2200 and not 10% of 2000. Let's discuss an example on this. We will solve this example. So interest charge for the first year in this case would be same as the simple interest, which would be 10% of 2000 equal to 200. Interest charge in second year would be 10% of 2000 plus 200. This is very important to note here. We are not calculating it as 10% of 2000 as we did it in simple interest. In compound interest, we add the interest in the first year to the principal. So here we are doing 2000 plus 200 and in turn calculate a 10% of that. So that becomes rupees 220. So the total interest would become 420. And the total amount after 2 years would be 2000 plus 420 equal to 2420. Now you can see that in simple interest the total amount after 2 years was 2000. But in compound interest, the total amount after 2 years is 2420. So the point is that when you get interest as a compounded thing, your total amount would always be more than what you would have made in a simple interest. Now we will discuss about the compounding frequency. In the last example, we discussed that the interest on the first year would be added to the principal in the second year. That is, the interest accumulated in first year would again be part of principal and the interest would be charged on the total amount. This is called annual compounding because we are adding the interest to the principal after first year, that is 1 year. It means the compounding is annual. But what if the interest is accumulated after every 6 months and is added to the principal? This is basically called as semi-annual compounding. Well, let's discuss in detail about compounding frequency. Now, the compounding is called annual when the interest is added to the principal after 1 year. That is, number of times the compounding is done a year is 1. The frequency is called semi-annual compounding when interest is added to the principal after every 6 months. It means number of times compounding is done in a year is 2. That is 12 months divided by 6 equal to 2. Similarly, in quarterly compounding, the number of times the compounding is done a year is of 4 times and the compounding is done after every 3 months. And the same logic applies to monthly compounding. Now we discuss about an example where initial amount is 2000 and we have to calculate the total amount after 2 years considering semi-annual compounding. The rate of interest is supposed to be 10%. So the interest charged in first 6 months would be 5% of 2000 equal to 100. Now why we are taking here 5%? Because the 10% rate is for the full year. But we are calculating the interest charge for the first 6 months. So we have to make the rate of interest also half. 10 by 2, that is 5. So we calculate 5% of 2000 equal to 100. Now interest charge from 6 months to 1 year, that is the second compounding period. In this, the interest would be 5% of 2000, which is the initial amount, plus 100, which is the interest charged in first 6 months. So the value becomes 105. Now interest charge from 1 year to 18 months would be 5% of 2000 plus 100 plus 105, which will be equal to 110.25. Now we calculate the interest charge for the fourth period, that is from 18 months to 2 years, which would be 5% of 2000 the initial amount, 100 the interest charge in the first 6 months, 105 which is the interest charge from 6 months to 1 year, and then 110.25 which is the interest charge from 1 year to 18 months. So the value comes out to be 115.76. So the total interest becomes 100 plus 105 plus 110.25 plus 115.76 equal to 431.01. So the total amount after 2 years would be 2000 plus 431.01 equal to 2431.01. So this is our amount after 2 years, considering the compounding is semi-annual. Now you must remember, when the compounding was annual, the total amount was 2420 in our previous example, and when the compounding is semi-annual, the total amount becomes 2431.01. So greater the frequency of compounding, the greater would be the total amount after a certain period. That's a very important concept, and a question can be asked on this in the exam. Now we will discuss about compounding interest formula, but first let's discuss what's the need for that. Now suppose I have to calculate the value of rupees 2000 after 5 years considering semi-annual compounding. So it means I have to calculate this step by step for 5 years, that is 10 time periods. So from starting it will be for first 6 months, then 6 months to 12 months, 12 months to 18 months, 18 months to 24 months. So like this I'll continue till the period of 5 years or 60 months. But then isn't it tedious? So what do we do? Yes, there is a very easy solution. There is a compound interest formula which you can directly use and which will give you an answer directly. You need not go into a step by step thing to solve the question. Now the formula is that the amount at the end of period would be P, and then it would be 1 plus R by M raised to the power M into N. Now the P here is the initial principal, R is the annual rate of interest. In a previous example it was 10% always. N is the number of years, that is you want to calculate the amount after how much or how many years. M is the number of times compounding is done per year. So for annual compounding M will be equal to 1, for semi-annual compounding M will be equal to 2. So if we want to calculate the amount at the end of 5 years using this formula, we will try to solve this example. So the amount at end of 5 years would use this formula, P into 1 plus R by M raised to the power M into N. P here is 2000, R is 10%, M equal to semi-annual compounding, because we are assuming that we want to calculate this for semi-annual compounding, and N equal to 5 years because we want to calculate after 5 years. So putting all these values in this formula, we get is 2000 into 1 plus 0.1 by 2 raised to the power 2 into 5. 2 here is value of M, which is a compounding frequency, and 5 is the number of years. So the value we get is 3257.78. So you can see it becomes very easy to calculate it using the formula, but yes, you will need to use a calculator to solve this equation, which is raised to the power 10. But in exam, since you are used to you are allowed to use the calculator, it becomes very easy to find the final amount after 5 years. Now what is the future value? Well, future value as a name is a different, but it is nothing else a same as a value calculated after compounding after certain number of years. So the value of or the formula of future value remains the same. So the amount at the end of period is the future value. So the formula which we use for calculating the amount at the end of period can also be used for future value. So the same formula applies here. Now let's do an example. Suppose at the time of your birth, that is around 25 years ago, your father deposited 1200 in an account at an annual rate of 15%. How much money would exist in that account today, assuming annual compounding? So this question is basically about that 25 years ago your father deposited 1200 in your account. The interest rate at that time was 15%. Now how much money should be in your account today, and the compounding which is considered in this example is annual compounding. So basically the equation becomes something like this. 1200 is your initial amount. You have to find the future value and the period is 25 years. So the future value, we use this formula. P equal to 1200, very easy. R equal to 15%, clearly given in the question. M equal to 1 because this is annual compounding. N equal to 25 years. Now you put this numbers in the equation, you get this equation, and the result, final result would be 39502.74. So again you would have to solve this with the help of calculator, and since they are allowed in the exam, it should not be a problem for you. Now this example also tells you the power of compounding. Your father deposited just 1200, which is a very meager amount. But after 25 years, what you are getting is around 40,000, which is a decent sum of money. So that's why many wealth management advisors say that start investing at an early age and take the benefits of power of compounding. Now we will discuss about annuities, and we will see how to calculate the future value of annuities. First of all, do not get yourself confused by this red part in this slide. Consider just on the 5 years which are written at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each year a person is investing 1000 rupees. That a person is investing 1000 rupees in the first year, 1000 rupees in the second year, 1000 rupees in the third year, and hence like this in the fourth and the fifth year. Now such a cash flow where you are investing the same amount of money each year is called annuity. Now the examples what we have done before, in that we were just investing a certain amount for a single year. We were not repeating that for the coming years. But in this example, we are investing a certain amount repeatedly over 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. So such a cash flow is called an annuity. Now we see that in such an annuity where you invest 1000 at the end of each year at the interest rate of 5%, how do you calculate the future value at the end of 5 years? Right. So the first thing is that you calculate it step by step. That is, first you take the money invested at the end of first year, which is 1000, and you calculate its value after 5 years using the formula what we have discussed in the previous slides. So like in this example, you can see that the 1000 invested in the first year would become around 1215.51 after 5 years. This is calculated using simple formula for the future value of money. And then you repeat the same thing to calculate the future value for the second year, for the third year, for the fourth year, and for the fifth year. So you keep on calculating for each of these 5 years, and ultimately you add all those values and you will get an answer, which in this case would be 5525.64. So the future value of 1000 invested for 5 years at a rate of 5% would be 5525.64. But don't you think that this whole process is tedious? Because you have to do calculations in 5 steps, then add the value obtained in all those steps to reach a final value. Well, we have a solution. There are already derived formulas for annuities which you can use in the exam. It will help you save time also. and most probably you will get a correct answer by using that formula. So the formula for annuity is this, where future value of annuity is C. C is the cash flow per period, that is the amount you are investing, into 1 plus I raised to the power n. I is the interest rate, in this case it is 5%. N is the number of payments, that is, or the years you are investing, in this case it would be 5. So I plus 1 raised to the power n minus 1 divided by I. I again is the interest rate. Now let's try to solve this example using the formula, and let's see that do we get the same amount, which is 5525.64. So here are the values. If we use this formula, C would be equal to 1000, which is the cash flow or the money invested each year. I equal to 5%, that is the rate of interest, and N equal to 5, that is the number of times the money is invested. So when we put this into formula, you can clearly see that we get the answer 5525.6. You can just spend a moment on this to understand how we have put the values and how do we have got the answer. We will just wait for 15 to 20 seconds for you to gauge this expression to calculate the future value of annuity. Well, I think you would have already gauged by now that putting the or using this formula for annuities give you answer in a very quick time, and most of the time I think it will be correct because you are doing just one calculations instead of doing 5 calculations. Again, since this question is raised to the power 5, you would be required to use the calculator. So do practice well using the calculator because it would be very handy for you in the exam and it will help you solve the questions easily. Now, what is present value of money? Well, this is, as a concept, it's a different thing, but when you have understood the future value of money, it's very easy to understand the present value of money. It's just that you would be given some future value and you would have to calculate the present value before 5 years. So say today you have got around 10,000 in your bank account, and you would have to calculate that what was the amount that was invested 5 years before, which became 10,000 today. So the amount which you invested 5 years ago would be the present value, or some would say is it a past value. So just a matter of your sense what you use, but ultimately in these type of questions the past value or the present value means the same. So the future value formula we discussed is future value equal to P into 1 plus R by M raised to the power M into N. Now P here is the present value, so we can just use this formula by tweaking it a bit. So P becomes future value divided by 1 plus R by M raised to the power M into N. So the formula remains the same, it's only that we have to calculate now P, which is present value, instead of calculating future value. It remains the same. M is the compounding frequency, that is the number of times the interest is compounded each year. N is the number of years. R is the rate of interest per annum. Now let's do an example on present value of money. Suppose you are valuing a project that is expected to run for 5 years and it is expected to get one-time cash flow of $500 million after 5 years. You estimate a discount rate of 11%. What is the present value of this cash flow? So the question says that after 5 years, you will get around $500 million from a project which is supposed to run 5 years. So you will get this 500 million 5 years from today. And the estimated discount rate, or you can say rate of interest, is 11%. What is the present value of cash flow? So this is a very simple numerical. So 500 million would be the future value after 5 years, and you have to calculate the present value, that is now. So you will use this formula P equal to future value by 1 plus R by M raised to power M into N. P is not given, you have to calculate. Future value is given as 500 million. R is given as 11%, N is given as 5 years, and M is given as 1, because we are assuming that compounding is annual. So when we put these values in the formula, what we get is P equal to 500 divided by 1 plus 0.11 divided by 1 raised to power 1 into 5. So when you solve this equation, you will get your answer as 296.73. You can just spend a moment to understand how we have solved this step by step. We will pause for 15 to 20 seconds. Well, I hope you would have already solved this even on the paper by your hand. This is a very simple numerical, and again we request you to keep practicing this on the calculator. Never use Excel sheets and all to calculate, because in the real exam you would be required to use the calculator. Now we will take this opportunity to let you know that all our courses are available on mobile, which is an Android mobile app. So you can learn anytime, anywhere. You can learn while traveling, you can learn while you are in office. So it's just about your dedication. The course would be available to you anywhere and anytime. Now for any information on our courses, you can visit www.adutab.co.in. You can visit our YouTube channel by the name Adutab, or you can call us at 8146207241. Well, thank you, but before I say goodbye, I must tell you that this video itself would not be sufficient for your examination end-to-end preparation. So you must complement it either with studying this topic from some good book, or you can follow this up with our concept notes on this topic, in which we have included around 25 to 30 numericals, which are must for you to practice to get a good hold of this topic, so that you can build confidence and speed, and that will help you in the exam. Well, wish you good luck for the exam. Thank you. Bye.